2 rotations ago, we had to replace the entire eastern wall of Combat Arena 7. The structural damage was so severe that our engineering teams are still arguing about what kind of weapon could have caused that level of destruction. The official incident report listed it as catastrophic equipment failure during routine combat exercises. The truth was far more disturbing. I am Vorthek the Render, Arena Master of the Grand Colosseum on Keth Prime, and I have overseen gladiatorial combat for over 3 decades. I have seen Krellian berserkers tear apart battle mechs with their bare claws. I have watched void stalkers phase through solid matter to eviscerate their opponents. I have witnessed plasma worms melt through titanium armor like it was ice. But nothing, absolutely nothing, had prepared me for what happened when we bought a human. The purchase itself seemed routine at the time. A group of Zelkari slave traders had arrived at our procurement docks with their usual cargo of exotic specimens from the Outer Rim territories. Most were the standard offerings: warrior castes from low-gravity worlds, predator species from jungle planets, the occasional psychic variant from the nebula colonies. Then they showed us something different. This one comes from a world the Galactic Survey Corps has classified as Category X, explained Dealer Rex, his tentacles writhing with what I now realize was nervous excitement. The species calls their planet Earth and themselves humans. The specimen was contained in a standard restraint pod, unconscious from capture sedatives. At first glance it appeared completely unremarkable, bipedal, approximately 2 meters in height, with the pale pink skin common to many mammalian species, no visible natural weapons, no apparent defensive adaptations, no obvious signs of enhanced musculature or bone density. Category X? I asked, consulting my purchasing database. I am not familiar with that classification. Rex's eye stalks twisted in what his species considered a shrug. Some bureaucratic designation related to environmental conditions. The important thing is that we acquired this specimen at an excellent price. My assistant, Garrick, leaned over to examine the restraint pod's bio readings. Cardiovascular system appears standard. Nervous system shows basic vertebrate configuration. Bone density is actually below average for most gladiator species. How much? I asked, though I was already losing interest. The Colosseum crowd demanded spectacular combat, and this creature looked like it would barely survive its first match. 50,000 credits, Vrex replied. I laughed, a sound that echoed through the procurement bay and caused several nearby workers to scatter. 50,000. For this? You could get a Vorthan Battlelord for half that price. Rex said, his tentacles now coiling in patterns I could not interpret. But Battlelords are common. This specimen is unique. According to our research, humans have never appeared in gladiatorial combat before. Novelty. The one thing that could guarantee packed arenas and increased betting activity. The crowd loved seeing new species fight, especially if they fought in unusual ways. 20,000, I countered, and that is only because of the novelty factor. We settled on 30,000 credits, and I authorized the transfer of 1 human male to Gladiator Holding Cell Block C. Standard processing, medical evaluation, combat assessment, basic training orientation. That was my first mistake. The human regained consciousness during the medical examination, which should have been impossible given the strength of Zelkari sedatives. Dr. Crix was in the middle of taking tissue samples when the creature suddenly opened its eyes and spoke. "Where am I?" it asked in perfect galactic standard. Dr. Crix nearly dropped his bioscanner. Fascinating. The specimen demonstrates advanced linguistic capabilities and rapid metabolic recovery from chemical sedation. The human sat up on the examination table, despite being restrained with molecular bonds designed to hold creatures 3 times its size. It looked around the medical bay with obvious intelligence, taking in every detail of its surroundings. I asked where I am, it repeated, and something in its voice made my defensive instincts twitch warnings. "You are in the Grand Colosseum Medical Facility," I replied, deciding that basic honesty would expedite the processing. "You have been purchased for gladiatorial combat." The human stared at me for several seconds, and I found myself shifting uncomfortably under its gaze. Its eyes were blue, the color of deep space, and they held an intelligence that seemed to catalog everything it observed. "Purchased," it said finally. As in slavery. As in entertainment, I corrected. You will fight in the arena for the amusement of our patrons. Survive long enough, and you might earn your freedom. The human nodded slowly, as if processing this information. What is your arena survival rate? Dr. Crix consulted his datapad. Approximately 12% of new gladiators survive their first year. Those who demonstrate exceptional combat skills can expect longer careers. 12%, the human repeated. And how many gladiators achieve freedom? I laughed again, though this time it sounded forced even to my own ears. Freedom is earned through exceptional performance over multiple years. Perhaps 3 or 4 individuals per decade achieve release. The human looked at me with those unsettling blue eyes. What is your name? I am Vorthak the Render, arena master of this facility. My name is Jake Thompson, the human said. And you have made a very serious mistake. Something about the way it spoke made the medical bay suddenly feel colder. Dr. Crix's instruments began registering unusual readings from the human's biosignatures. What kind of mistake? I asked, though I was not sure I wanted to know the answer. Jake Thompson smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. You bought a United Earth Colonial Marine, he said quietly. And Colonial Marines do not stay captured. Dr. Crix looked up from his readings with obvious alarm. Arena Master, the specimen's adrenaline levels are spiking beyond normal parameters. Heart rate is increasing exponentially. Brain activity is showing patterns I have never observed before. Colonial Marine? I asked. What is that? Military, Jake replied, and his smile became something that made my survival instincts scream warnings. Special forces, trained to operate in hostile environments against superior numbers with minimal equipment. He gestured around the medical bay. Environments exactly like this one. Impossible, I said, though my voice sounded strange to my own auditory organs. The slave traders assured us you were captured during a peaceful exploration mission. The slave traders lied, Jake said simply. I was captured during a reconnaissance operation in disputed space. My unit will be looking for me. Dr. Crix's instruments were now making alarmed chirping sounds. Arena Master, we should consider increased security measures. The bio-readings suggest this specimen is far more dangerous than initial assessment indicated. I looked at Jake Thompson, who was sitting calmly on the examination table despite being restrained with enough molecular bonds to immobilize a Krellian berserker. He looked back at me with those blue eyes that seemed to see everything. How dangerous? I asked. Dr. Crix, Jake said conversationally, those molecular bonds you are using, what is their maximum tensile strength? Crix checked his datapad nervously. Approximately 50,000 pounds per square inch. Sufficient to restrain any known biological entity. Interesting, Jake said. And what powers the containment field around this facility? Standard fusion reactors with backup antimatter cells, I replied automatically, then wondered why I was answering his questions. Jake nodded thoughtfully. Antimatter. That explains the electromagnetic signature I detected during transport. What electromagnetic signature? Dr. Crix asked. The one that my suit's emergency beacon was transmitting before you confiscated my equipment, Jake replied calmly. The medical bay fell silent except for the humming of life support systems and the increasingly agitated chirping of monitoring equipment. Your suit had a beacon? I asked quietly. Colonial Marine armor comes with multiple redundant tracking and communication systems, Jake explained. Quantum entanglement transmitters, subspace relay networks, emergency transponders. The Zelkari, who captured me, were very thorough about removing visible equipment, but they missed the implanted systems. My 4-chambered heart began beating irregular rhythms. Implanted systems. Jake's smile returned, and this time it was accompanied by a sound that took me several seconds to identify as laughter. Human laughter, apparently, was not a pleasant sound. Bio-integrated combat enhancement packages, he said. Standard issue for Colonial Marines operating in hostile territory. Enhanced reflexes, increased strength, accelerated healing, combat stimulant glands, tactical analysis implants. Dr. Crix was frantically scanning Jake with every piece of medical equipment in the bay. Arena Master, I am detecting numerous foreign objects embedded throughout the specimen's skeletal and muscular systems. Metal components, crystalline matrices, what appears to be synthetic neural tissue. You are cyborgs, I whispered. We prefer the term augmented, Jake replied. And before you ask, yes, the tracking beacon is still active. My people know exactly where I am. The implications of this information crashed over me like a plasma storm. If this human was telling the truth, if he really was some kind of enhanced military operative, if his people were actively searching for him, how long? I asked. How long until they find me? Jake shrugged, a gesture that somehow managed to look threatening despite his restraints. Depends on how far we have traveled from the capture point. Could be days, could be hours. What will they do when they find you? Jake's expression became completely calm, and that was somehow more terrifying than his smile had been. They will retrieve their asset, he said quietly, and they will punish anyone who interfered with that retrieval. Dr. Crix was making small, choking sounds while staring at his bioscanners. Arena Master, the specimen's combat enhancement systems appear to be activating. I am reading massive spikes in neural activity, muscle density and bone calcification. Just thinking about home, Jake said, conversationally. It tends to trigger automatic responses. I stepped back from the examination table, suddenly very aware that we were in an enclosed space with something that might be far more dangerous than we had realized. What do you want? I asked. Right now, I want you to release these restraints and escort me to a communication terminal so I can contact my unit and arrange peaceful extraction. And if we refuse? Jake's blue eyes seemed to grow colder. Then you will learn why Earth is classified as a Category X Deathworld. Deathworld? Dr. Crix squeaked. The traders said it was an environmental classification. It is, Jake replied. Earth is classified as a deathworld because everything on it evolved to kill everything else on it. The atmosphere is toxic to most galactic species. The gravity would crush anyone not specifically adapted to it. The radiation levels would sterilize most life forms within hours. He looked directly at me. And humans are the apex predators that survived all of that and decided to explore the galaxy anyway. The medical bay's door chimed, and my head of security, Captain Zurex, entered with a full squad of guards, 8 of the most experienced combat specialists on Keth Prime, armed with the latest energy weapons and wearing full tactical armor. Arena Master, Zurex announced. We have detected unusual energy signatures from this holding area. Are you experiencing difficulties with the new specimen? I looked at Jake Thompson, who was watching the armed guards with obvious interest rather than fear. His bio readings were still climbing toward levels that should have been impossible for any organic creature. Captain Zurex, I said carefully, our new gladiator claims to be a human military operative with tracking implants and combat enhancements. He also claims his people are actively searching for him. Zurex laughed, a sound like grinding metal. Military operative. Arena Master, look at it. No natural weapons, no defensive adaptations, barely adequate muscle mass. It would not survive 5 minutes against a Class 2 combat drone. Jake turned his attention to Captain Zurex. Captain, what is the standard procedure for containing dangerous gladiators? Multiple restraint systems, constant surveillance, and immediate termination protocols if they show signs of escape attempts. Zurex replied automatically. And what restraint rating would you assign to me? Zurex gazed up and down dismissively. Class 1 minimum security, possibly Class 2 if we are being overly cautious. Dr. Crix, Jake said, please show Captain Zurex my current bio readings. Crix held up his scanner nervously. The display showed numbers that made Zurex's expression change from amusement to concern. These readings cannot be accurate, Zark said. No organic creature generates this level of neural activity without experiencing immediate brain death. No known organic creature, Jake corrected. But then you have never dealt with humans before. He looked around at all of us. Me, Dr. Crix, Captain Zurex, and 8 heavily armed guards. All of us staring at him with growing unease. I am going to make you an offer, Jake said calmly. Release me now, provide transportation to the nearest communication relay, and pretend this entire incident never happened. In exchange, I will ensure that when my people arrive, they will limit their response to retrieving me and leaving peacefully. And if we refuse? Zirax asked, his hand moving toward his weapon. Jake's smile returned, and this time it was accompanied by something that made every alarm in my head start screaming warnings. Then you will discover why the Galactic Survey Corps classified Earth as Category X, he said quietly. And you will learn what happens when you try to enslave someone whose species spent millions of years learning how to kill everything that tried to kill them. Dr. Crix's bioscanner began emitting a high-pitched whine. The molecular bonds holding Jake to the examination table were starting to vibrate at frequencies that should not have been possible. "Arena Master," Dr. Crix whispered. "We should consider his offer." I looked at Jake Thompson sitting calmly on the examination table while his bio readings climbed toward impossible levels and his restraints began showing signs of structural stress. "What exactly are you?" I asked. Jake's blue eyes met mine, and for a moment I saw something that made me understand why some species develop religion and others develop nightmares. "I am what you get when evolution runs a 4-billion-year experiment in creating the perfect killer," he said quietly. "And you just bought me for 30,000 credits. The molecular bonds snapped. Not broke, not failed. Snapped, like they were made of crystalline fiber instead of quantum-locked matter. Jake Thompson stood up from the examination table, completely free of restraints, and stretched like he was working out muscle cramps after a long nap. "Thank you for the medical examination, Dr. Crix," he said politely. "Very thorough. Now about that communication terminal." Captain Zirax and his guards had their weapons trained on Jake, but something about his demeanor suggested that energy weapons might not be as decisive as they appeared. "Stand down, human," Zirax commanded. "Submit to restraint, or we will use lethal force." Jake looked at the 8 armed guards, calculated something behind those blue eyes, and smiled. "Captain Zirax," he said conversationally, "how many gladiators have you personally seen die in this arena?" "Hundreds," Zirax replied, cautiously. "And how many of them were killed by energy weapons?" "Most use traditional combat weapons for entertainment value. Energy weapons are considered unsporting." Jake nodded thoughtfully. "So you have never actually seen someone die from military-grade energy weapon fire?" "What does that matter?" Zirax demanded. "It matters," Jake replied, "because you are about to find out that humans do not die the same way other species do." What happened next defied every law of biology I thought I understood. Jake Thompson moved, not quickly, not with superhuman speed or impossible agility. He simply moved from one position to another, and somehow in the space between those positions, everything changed. Captain Zirax fired his weapon, a full-power energy burst that should have vaporized anything organic. The beam struck Jake's center mass, and for a moment I thought the demonstration was over. Then Jake kept moving. The energy blast had torn through his clothing and left a smoking crater in his chest that should have been instantly fatal. Instead, Jake reached Captain Zirax before the Zelkari could fire a second shot. What followed was not combat. It was education. Jake grabbed Zirax's weapon with one hand and crushed it. Not broke it, not damaged it. Crushed it into scrap metal with his bare fingers while Zirax stared in shock. The other 7 guards opened fire simultaneously. 8 military-grade energy weapons, discharging at maximum power in an enclosed space. Jake moved between the beams like he was dancing, his wounded chest already beginning to show signs of impossible healing. One guard managed a direct hit that should have severed Jake's left arm. Instead, Jake caught the guard's next shot with his damaged hand and somehow redirected the energy back at its source. The guard simply ceased to exist. "Impossible," Dr. Crix whispered, his bioscanner now emitting a continuous alarm tone. "The energy absorption required to accomplish that would exceed normal biological parameters," Jake finished, as he systematically disabled the remaining guards with a combination of impossible strength, unnatural speed, and tactical expertise that suggested extensive military training. "Like I said, you have never dealt with humans before." Within 30 seconds, 8 of the most experienced security officers on Keth Prime were unconscious, disarmed, and arranged in neat rows against the medical bay wall. None of them appeared to be seriously injured, which somehow made the demonstration more terrifying than if Jake had simply killed them all. Jake walked back to the examination table and sat down, as if nothing had happened. The smoking crater in his chest was already closing, new tissue forming at a rate that violated every medical principle I knew. "Now," he said calmly, "about that communication terminal." I stared at him in complete silence. Dr. Crix was making small, whimpering sounds, while his equipment registered bio-readings that suggested Jake Thompson was operating on energy levels equivalent to a small fusion reactor. "What are you?" I whispered. Jake looked at me with those blue eyes that had seen things I could not imagine. "I am a Colonial Marine, Arena Master. We are what happens when a Deathworld decides to send ambassadors to the galaxy." He gestured toward the unconscious guards. "This was me being polite. You really do not want to see what happens when I stop being polite." "Your chest," Dr. Crix said faintly. "The wound is healing at impossible speed. Enhanced cellular regeneration," Jake explained matter-of-factly. "Standard Colonial Marine modification takes about 10 minutes to fully recover from energy weapon damage, assuming no vital organs are completely destroyed." 10 minutes? I asked. "Give or take. Depends on the severity of the trauma and available nutrition." Jake looked around the medical bay. "Speaking of which, do you have any food? Combat healing burns a lot of calories." I laughed. I could not help it. Here was a creature that had just demonstrated capabilities that redefined everything I thought I knew about biological limitations, and he was asking for food. "What do humans eat?" I asked. "Pretty much anything organic. We evolved as omnivores on a world where food scarcity was a constant threat. Our digestive systems can process most known biological matter." Dr. Crix consulted his datapad with shaking manipulators. "Most gladiator species require carefully balanced diets of specific nutrients. Colonial marines can digest cellulose, synthesize essential vitamins from raw materials, and derive nutrition from substances that would be toxic to most species." Jake interrupted. "We are designed to operate independently for extended periods in hostile environments." "Designed?" I asked. "Engineered, augmented, enhanced. Whatever term you prefer." Jake stood up again, and I noticed that his movements were becoming smoother, more coordinated. His bio-readings had stabilized at levels that should have been impossible. The human military learned long ago that standard biology was insufficient for galactic operations. "How many others like you are there?" I asked quietly. Jake smiled. And this time the expression contained something that made me realize our conversation was nearing a critical decision point. "How many Colonial Marines in total? Classified. How many in my unit?" 12. "How many currently searching for me?" He looked at a device on his wrist that I had not noticed before. "All of them. And according to my tracking implant, they will arrive at this facility in approximately 6 hours. The medical bay fell silent except for the humming of life support systems and the soft groaning sounds coming from the unconscious guards. 6 hours, I repeated. 6 hours, Jake confirmed. "Which gives you time to make a decision." "What kind of decision?" Jake's blue eyes met mine, and I saw something in them that made me understand why Category X worlds were avoided by most galactic species. "The easy way or the hard way," he said quietly. "Release me, provide transportation off-planet, and my people will never bother you again. Or keep me here, and discover what happens when 12 enhanced human soldiers decide to conduct a combat rescue operation against a facility that they consider hostile." I looked around the medical bay at the evidence of what one human could accomplish in 30 seconds against trained security personnel. Then I tried to imagine what 12 of them could do to the Grand Coliseum. "What would a combat rescue operation involve?" I asked, though I was not sure I wanted to know. Jake's smile became something that belonged in nightmares. "Arena Master, you run gladiatorial games for entertainment. My people conduct military operations for survival. There is a significant difference in methodology." Dr. Crix was frantically scanning Jake with every piece of equipment in the medical bay. "Arena Master, his biosignatures are continuing to increase. Whatever enhancement systems he possesses, they appear to be reaching full operational capacity." "Is that significant?" I asked. "Dr. Crix," Jake said conversationally, What you are observing is standard colonial marine combat preparation. My body is optimizing itself for potential hostile action. How much more enhanced can you become? Crix whispered. Jake looked at him with those terrifying blue eyes. Dr. Crix, what you have seen so far is my baseline operational capacity. If I perceive an immediate threat to my survival, my combat enhancement systems will activate emergency protocols. What kind of emergency protocols? I asked. Though every instinct I possessed was screaming that I did not want to know. The kind that allow a single colonial marine to fight their way through an entire enemy installation, Jake replied calmly. The kind that turn humans into the nightmare stories other species tell their young. He stood up from the examination table and walked toward the medical bay exit. None of us moved to stop him. 6 hours. Arena Master, he said as he reached the door. I suggest you use that time wisely. Wait, I called out. Where are you going? Jake paused and looked back at me. To find that communication terminal, and to get some food, and possibly to take a look at your gladiatorial arena. Why the arena? Jake's smile returned, and this time it carried implications that made my survival instincts scream warnings I could not ignore. Professional curiosity, he said quietly. I want to see what passes for combat entertainment in this part of the galaxy. He left us there in the medical bay, staring at each other in shocked silence while 8 unconscious guards slowly began showing signs of regaining consciousness. 6 hours until 12 enhanced human soldiers arrived to retrieve their missing teammate. 6 hours to decide whether the Grand Colosseum would cooperate with that retrieval or attempt to prevent it. As I looked around at the evidence of what one human could accomplish in less than a minute, I began to suspect that we had made the worst purchasing decision in the history of gladiatorial entertainment. And somehow I had the feeling that our education in human capabilities had only just begun. 4 hours and 37 minutes remained until the humans arrived. I knew this because I had been checking my chronometer every 30 seconds since Jake Thompson walked out of the medical bay, leaving behind 8 unconscious guards in a pile of questions that threatened to collapse my understanding of galactic biology. The Grand Colosseum's main arena was currently hosting the weekly Bloodbath Championship, where 64 gladiators fought in elimination rounds until only one survived. The crowd was unusually enthusiastic today, their roars echoing through the facility's corridors as another contestant met their inevitable end. I should have been focusing on the event, managing the spectacle, ensuring maximum entertainment value for our paying customers. Instead, I found myself standing in the arena's upper observation deck, watching security footage of a human wandering through our facility like he owned it. Jake Thompson had indeed found the communications center, though found was an inadequate description for what he had actually done. Security recordings showed him walking directly to the facility's most secure data processing center, somehow bypassing 6 different security checkpoints without triggering a single alarm. The guards stationed at those checkpoints later reported that they had seen him approaching, had intended to stop him, but had somehow forgotten to act on that intention. When questioned further, they described feeling strangely cooperative and unusually helpful during their brief interactions with the human. Arena Master, my communications officer Thylex announced nervously, the human has accessed our primary data networks. How? I demanded. Those systems require biometric authorization from senior staff members. Unknown, Thylex replied, his breathing tubes fluttering with agitation. According to our logs, he used your personal access codes. I stared at him in disbelief. I never gave him my access codes. No, sir, but the system records show that you personally escorted him to the communications center and provided full authorization for unrestricted network access. My 4-chambered heart began beating irregular rhythms. Thylex, I have been standing in this observation deck for the past hour. I have not been anywhere near the communications center. The Thylex consulted his datapad with increasing alarm. Sir, our security recordings show you walking with the human at exactly the time you claim to have been here. Show me, I commanded. The holographic display activated, revealing security footage from the communications center. There I was, walking alongside Jake Thompson, apparently engaged in friendly conversation as I personally provided him access to every classified system in the facility. Except I had no memory of any of that happening. Impossible, I whispered. This recording must be falsified. Sir, Thylek said quietly, if this recording is false, then someone has access to technology that can create perfect holographic duplicates of facility personnel, complete with accurate biometric data and behavioral patterns. I watched myself on the recording, laughing at something Jake said, personally entering override codes that should have been known only to me. My duplicate appeared relaxed, cooperative, almost friendly. What is he transmitting? I asked. Alex's breathing tubes went completely still. Unknown. The communication protocols he is using are not in our databases. The signal is being routed through quantum channels we cannot monitor or intercept. How long has he been transmitting? Approximately 45 minutes. 45 minutes of unrestricted communication with an unknown recipient, using technology that bypassed every security measure we possessed. I began to understand why the slave traders had been so eager to sell Jake Thompson for such a reasonable price. Arena Master, my head of arena operations, Captain Vex, approached with obvious urgency. We have a situation in the gladiator holding areas. What kind of situation? Vex consulted his tactical display with nervous efficiency. The human has entered holding block spray. He is currently talking to our gladiators. Through the arena's main viewing screens, I could see the current championship match reaching its climax. A massive Krellian berserker was systematically dismembering what appeared to be the last surviving member of a Vorthan battle squad. The crowd was ecstatic. Talking to them about what? I asked. Unknown, Vex replied. But sir, we are monitoring unusual activity throughout the holding areas. Gladiators who should be preparing for upcoming matches are instead gathering around the human's location. Are they threatening him? No, sir. They appear to be listening. I abandoned the arena observation deck and headed toward holding block C, accompanied by a full security escort. If Jake Thompson was attempting to incite some kind of gladiator uprising, we needed to contain the situation before it compromised arena operations. The holding areas beneath the main arena were designed to house over 200 gladiators in various stages of combat readiness. Each cell was equipped with restraint fields, automated feeding systems, and medical monitoring equipment. The entire complex could be locked down instantly if any specimen showed signs of dangerous behavior. As we approached Block C, I began to hear something that made my survival instincts twitch warnings. The sound of laughter. Not the forced entertainment of frightened prey, but genuine amusement. Multiple species, laughing together in harmonious cooperation. Sir, Captain Vex whispered, this is highly irregular. Gladiators from different species rarely interact peacefully. Most are programmed to view each other as potential opponents. We reached the main corridor of Block C, and what I saw there defied every operational manual I had ever studied. Jake Thompson was sitting cross-legged on the floor in the center of the corridor, surrounded by approximately 40 gladiators representing 12 different species. They had arranged themselves in a rough circle, all facing him, all listening with obvious attention as he spoke. The restraint fields on their cells were still active, but the gladiators had somehow managed to position themselves as close to the corridor as possible. Those who could not fit in the immediate area were pressed against their cell barriers, straining to hear every word. So there I was, Jake was saying, his voice carrying clearly through the holding area, surrounded by 6 Zelkari hunting mechs, completely out of ammunition, and the only weapon I had left was a combat knife and a really bad attitude. The gladiators were hanging on every word. A massive Threxian war chief leaned forward with obvious interest. What did you do, human? Jake smiled, that terrifying smile I was beginning to recognize. I did what Colonial Marines do best. I adapted, improvised, and overcame. How? Asked the Vorthan battle maiden, her voice carrying the kind of professional curiosity one warrior shows to another. I used the hunting mech's own targeting systems against them, Jake replied. Zelkari technology relies heavily on automated threat assessment. If you understand their programming logic, you can manipulate their behavior patterns. Impossible, declared a Krellian berserker, his massive claws scraping against his cell barrier. Zelkari mechs are designed to eliminate any perceived threat immediately. Exactly, Jake said. Which is why I made myself appear to be the least threatening target in the area. The gladiators leaned closer, obviously fascinated by this tactical discussion. How does one appear non-threatening when surrounded by hunting mechs? Asked the Threxian war chief. Jake's smile became something that made my defensive instincts scream warnings. By making them think something else is more threatening. He gestured expansively. I used my combat knife to damage the mech's sensor arrays in very specific ways. Made it look like the damage was coming from each other instead of from me. They turned on each other, the Vorthan battle maiden said with obvious admiration. 6 mechs, 6 different targeting solutions, all identifying each other as primary threats, Jake confirmed. I just sat back and watched them eliminate each other while I stayed below their attention threshold. The gladiators erupted in appreciative laughter. These were individuals who had spent their entire lives perfecting combat techniques, and they were clearly impressed by Jake's tactical creativity. That is brilliant, the Krellian berserker admitted grudgingly. Using enemy programming against them. We should remember this technique. Oh, that is just basic colonial marine training, Jake said casually. Want to hear about the time I had to take down an entire Vorthan battlecruiser using nothing but maintenance tools and kitchen supplies? The gladiators responded with enthusiastic agreement. These were beings who lived for combat, who spent every day preparing for mortal struggle, and they were treating Jake Thompson like their favorite instructor. I stepped forward, trying to reassert some measure of control over the situation. Human, what are you doing in the gladiator holding areas? Jake looked up at me with those unsettling blue eyes. Hello, Arena Master. I was just having a conversation with your gladiators about combat tactics and strategic thinking. They are not permitted to socialize outside of supervised training periods, I said firmly. Return to your assigned holding cell immediately. The gladiators' collective response was immediate and alarming. 40 of the most dangerous beings in the facility all turned to look at me with expressions that suggested they were reconsidering their opinions about arena management. Arena Master, the Threxian war chief said with deceptive politeness, the human is providing valuable tactical education. We are learning much from his experiences. Educational sessions are scheduled and supervised, I replied. Unautorized gatherings are prohibited. The Krellian berserker made a sound that might have been laughter but carried implications of violence. Arena Master, when was the last time you personally engaged in combat? That is irrelevant, I said, though my voice sounded less confident than I intended. I am responsible for facility security and operational procedures. Vorthak, Jake said quietly, and something about the way he used my name made everyone in the corridor fall silent. These gladiators are not pets or entertainment devices. They are warriors, professional soldiers, combat specialists who deserve respect for their skills and experience. They are property of the Grand Colosseum, I replied automatically. Purchased for gladiatorial entertainment. The silence that followed was absolute and terrifying. 40 of the galaxy's most dangerous predators stared at me with expressions that suggested they were revising their opinions about our business relationship. Property, the Vorthan battle maiden repeated slowly. We are property. That is the legal status of all gladiators. I stammered. It is not personal. It is simply business, Jake finished. I understand completely, Arena Master. You purchase sentient beings for entertainment purposes. Nothing personal about it. His tone was conversational, almost friendly, but somehow it carried implications that made my survival instincts scream warnings. It is a legitimate business enterprise, I said defensively. Gladiatorial combat has been a respected form of entertainment for thousands of years. Oh, absolutely, Jake agreed. And I am sure your gladiators appreciate the opportunity to die for the amusement of paying customers. The Threxian war chief made a sound like grinding metal. Human, what is gladiatorial combat like on your world? We do not have gladiatorial combat, Jake replied simply. Humans consider forced combat to be slavery, and slavery is one of the few crimes that still carries a mandatory death sentence in colonial space. The silence returned, heavier this time. No gladiatorial combat? The Krellian berserker asked. How do your warriors test their skills? Voluntary military service, competitive sports, and simulated combat training, Jake said. Human warriors fight to protect their people and their ideals, not to entertain spectators. Voluntary military service. The Vorthan battle maiden repeated thoughtfully. Your soldiers choose to fight? Every single one, Jake confirmed. Colonial Marines are volunteers who have undergone years of training and enhancement specifically because they want to serve their species and protect human space. The gladiators exchanged glances that carried conversations I could not interpret. What happens to gladiators on human worlds? Asked the Threxian war chief. Jake's expression became something that made the corridor feel several degrees colder. There are no gladiators on human worlds. Anyone who attempted to operate a gladiatorial arena in colonial space would find themselves facing a military tribunal followed by immediate execution. Execution? I squeaked. For operating entertainment facility? For slavery, Jake corrected quietly. Humans take a very dim view of anyone who forces sentient beings to fight for entertainment. Captain Vex stepped closer to me and whispered urgently. Arena Master, we should remove the human from this area immediately. His statements are causing significant agitation among the gladiators. I looked around at 40 of the most dangerous beings in the galaxy, all staring at me with expressions that suggested they were reconsidering fundamental aspects of their existence. Jake Thompson, I said as authoritatively as I could manage, you are disrupting facility operations. Return to your assigned location immediately. Jake stood up from his cross-legged position, and somehow that simple movement made everyone in the corridor tense for potential combat. Arena Master, he said politely, I have been assigned to gladiatorial combat. Correct? That is correct. And gladiators are expected to fight in the arena for entertainment purposes. Yes. Jake's smile returned, and this time it carried implications that made my four-chambered heart start beating irregular rhythms. Then perhaps you could arrange a demonstration, he said quietly. I am very curious to see what passes for combat entertainment in this facility. The gladiators' collective response was immediate and enthusiastic. They wanted to see the human fight. It is not scheduled, I protested. Arena matches require extensive preparation, proper opponents' safety protocols. Arena Master? The Krellian berserker interrupted. We volunteer to face the human in combat. As do I, added the Threxian war chief. And I, said the Vorthan battle maiden. Within seconds, every gladiator in the holding area was volunteering to fight Jake Thompson. These were beings who normally refused to cooperate with arena management, who had to be coerced or threatened into participating in scheduled matches. Now they were enthusiastically requesting combat assignments. This is highly irregular, Captain Vex whispered. Gladiators never volunteer for unscheduled matches. Jake looked around at the eager faces surrounding him.
Interesting.
Your gladiators seem motivated by the prospect of voluntary combat. Voluntary, the Vorthan battle maiden repeated. We choose to fight, instead of being forced to fight. Exactly, Jake said. Combat is always more interesting when both participants actually want to be there. He looked directly at me with those blue eyes that seemed to see everything. What do you say, Arena Master? Are you interested in seeing what human combat capabilities look like when properly motivated? I found myself staring at 40 enthusiastic gladiators, and one human whose bio-readings had been climbing steadily toward impossible levels ever since he entered the holding area. What kind of demonstration did you have in mind? I asked, though every instinct I possessed was screaming that I did not want to know. Jake's smile became something that belonged in nightmares. Nothing too complicated, maybe a small tournament. Me versus some of your volunteers. Standard arena rules, whatever those might be. How many opponents? Captain Vex asked nervously. Jake looked around at the gladiators, calculating something behind those terrifying blue eyes. How many want to participate? He asked. Every single gladiator in the holding area raised their appendages in eager agreement. All of them, Jake said calmly. I will fight all of them. The corridor fell silent except for the humming of life support systems and the distant roar of the crowd watching the championship match above us. All of them, I whispered. 40 gladiators representing 12 different species? Sounds like fun, Jake replied cheerfully. When can we start? Captain Vex was making small choking sounds. Arena Master, this is impossible. No single combatant has ever faced more than 5 opponents simultaneously. The safety protocols alone. What safety protocols? Jake asked. I thought the objective was entertainment. Well, yes, but there are limits to what. Are there? Jake interrupted. Because from what I have observed, your gladiatorial system is designed to produce maximum spectacle through mortal combat. Why would you limit the spectacle? He gestured toward the gladiators, who were watching our conversation with obvious interest. You have 40 volunteers eager to test their skills against an unknown opponent. You have paying customers who presumably enjoy watching unusual combat scenarios, and you have approximately 4 hours before my people arrive to retrieve me. The implications of that timeline crashed over me like a plasma storm. 4 hours until 12 enhanced human soldiers arrived to conduct a military rescue operation. 4 hours to decide whether Jake Thompson was a prisoner or a guest. What are you proposing? I asked quietly. Jake's blue eyes met mine, and I saw something in them that made me understand why humans had earned their reputation across the galaxy. A simple demonstration, he said. Me versus your volunteers in your main arena, for the entertainment of your customers. If I win, you release me and provide transportation off-planet before my people arrive. If you lose? Jake shrugged, a gesture that somehow managed to look threatening despite its casualness. If I lose, then you will have provided your customers with unprecedented entertainment, and my people will have no reason to consider your facility hostile when they arrive. And if you win, Jake's smile returned, and this time it was accompanied by something that made every alarm in my head start screaming warnings. If I win, he said quietly, then you will have learned something very important about human combat capabilities. And your gladiators will have learned what it means to fight someone who actually wants to be there. I looked around at 40 of the most dangerous beings in the galaxy, all staring at me with expressions of eager anticipation. These were creatures who lived for combat, who spent every day preparing for mortal struggle, and they were treating the prospect of fighting Jake Thompson like the opportunity of a lifetime. Arena Master, the Threxian war chief said formally, we request permission to engage in voluntary combat with the human. This is madness, Captain Vex whispered. 1 combatant against 40 opponents. The odds are impossible. Jake looked at him with those unsettling blue eyes. Captain, what do you know about Colonial Marine training? Nothing, Vex admitted. Colonial Marines are trained to operate alone in hostile territory against superior numbers with minimal equipment. Jake explained calmly. 40 opponents is not impossible odds. It is Tuesday afternoon. The gladiators erupted in appreciative laughter. They understood warrior humor, and they were clearly impressed by Jake's confidence. Very well, I heard myself saying, though I was not sure when I had made that decision. 1 exhibition match, you versus volunteers from our gladiator population. Standard arena rules. Combat continues until one side is unable to continue. Jake nodded approvingly. When do we start? The current championship match should conclude within the hour, I said. We can arrange your demonstration as the evening's finale. Perfect, Jake said. That gives me time to prepare. What kind of preparation do you require? Captain Vex asked. Jake's smile became something that made my survival instincts scream warnings I could not ignore. I need to contact my unit and inform them that their retrieval operation should be delayed until after the demonstration, he said quietly. I would hate for them to arrive in the middle of the entertainment. The holding area fell silent except for the humming of life support systems and the sound of my own increasingly irregular heartbeat. How long a delay? I asked. Jake consulted the device on his wrist. Depends on how long the demonstration takes. Could be minutes. Could be hours. He looked around at the eager gladiators surrounding him. Depends on how motivated your volunteers are. The Krellian berserker made a sound like grinding metal that I interpreted as laughter. Human. We are very motivated. Excellent, Jake replied. Then this should be interesting. As we left the holding area to prepare for what promised to be the most unprecedented gladiatorial match in the history of the Grand Colosseum, I found myself wondering if I had just agreed to provide entertainment for our customers, or if I had just arranged for 40 of our most valuable gladiators to learn firsthand why humans were classified as a Category X species. 3 hours and 42 minutes until Jake Thompson's people arrived to retrieve him. 1 hour until he faced 40 professional warriors in single combat. And somehow, As I watched him walk calmly toward the arena preparation areas, I began to suspect that our education in human combat capabilities was about to reach an entirely new level of terrifying enlightenment. The crowd above was still cheering for the championship match, unaware that they were about to witness something that would redefine their understanding of what was possible in gladiatorial combat. And I was beginning to realize that Jake Thompson had never intended to escape from the Grand Coliseum. He had intended to demonstrate exactly why capturing humans was the worst mistake anyone in the galaxy could make. The Grand Coliseum had never been so full. Word of the unprecedented exhibition match had spread through the facility's communication networks with impossible speed, and every available seat was occupied by spectators eager to witness something that defied all previous understanding of gladiatorial combat. 1 human, 40 professional warriors. Single elimination. I stood in the Arena Master's control booth, surrounded by displays showing crowd statistics, betting odds, and bio readings from the participants. The numbers told a story that made my survival instincts scream warnings I could no longer ignore. Betting odds 807 to 1 against the human. Crowd size 227,000 spectators. The largest audience in Coliseum history. Time remaining until Jake Thompson's military unit arrived, 2 hours 31 minutes. Bio readings from Jake Thompson, still climbing toward levels that should have been impossible for any organic creature. Arena Master, my communications officer Thylix announced nervously, we are receiving transmission requests from 17 different news networks. Word of this match has reached the Galactic media. Deny all requests, I replied automatically, though my attention was focused on the arena preparation areas where Jake Thompson was conducting what he called his pre-combat routine. Through the security cameras, I watched him perform a series of movements that looked like some kind of ritualized combat dance. His enhanced physiology was fully activated now, and the biomonitors were registering energy outputs equivalent to a military-grade power cell. Sir, Captain Vex approached with obvious urgency. The gladiators are requesting permission to use their full combat equipment loadouts. Explain. Standard exhibition matches limit participants to basic weapons and minimal armor for entertainment value, Vex said. But given the unprecedented nature of this contest, the volunteers are requesting access to their personal weapons and battle gear. I considered this request. 40 gladiators, with restricted equipment, would provide one level of spectacle. 40 gladiators, with full military loadouts, would provide something entirely different. Granted, I decided. Maximum equipment authorization for all participants. Vex's breathing tubes fluttered with alarm. Sir? That includes energy weapons, battle armor, and strategic-level combat systems. The safety protocols have been irrelevant since the moment we purchased a human, I interrupted. If we are going to witness this demonstration, we might as well see it properly executed. Through the arena's main viewing screens, I watched as 40 of the galaxy's most dangerous warriors equipped themselves for what they clearly considered the fight of their lives. Krellian berserkers strapped on powered combat claws. Orthan battle maidens activated personal shield generators. Threxian warchiefs armed themselves with plasma cannons designed to destroy armored vehicles. These were not entertainment fighters preparing for staged combat. These were professional soldiers preparing for war. Arena Master. Dr. Crix's voice crackled through the communication system from the medical bay. I am monitoring the humans' biosignatures from the arena preparation area. The readings are unprecedented. Define unprecedented. His cellular activity is operating at approximately 400% of baseline levels. His nervous system is generating electrical impulses equivalent to a Class 3 combat computer. His muscular and skeletal systems are showing density readings that exceed most metallic alloys. I stared at the bio readouts on my display screens. Numbers that defied every law of biology I thought I understood. Is he still human? I asked quietly. Technically, yes, Dr. Crix replied. But Arena Master, what we are observing is not natural evolution. This is deliberate engineering on a scale that suggests human military technology is far more advanced than galactic intelligence estimates. How much more advanced? The silence that followed lasted several seconds before Dr. Crix responded. Arena Master, if these readings are accurate, then individual human soldiers possess capabilities equivalent to entire squad-level units from most other species. The implications of that statement crashed over me like a plasma storm. If Jake Thompson was representative of human military capability, then the Colonial Marines were not just soldiers. They were living weapons platforms. Arena Master. The arena announcer's voice echoed through the facility. All participants are ready. Shall we begin the exhibition? I looked down into the main arena where Jake Thompson stood alone in the center of the combat zone. He had refused all offers of weapons and armor, choosing to face 40 fully equipped professional warriors with nothing but his enhanced physiology and whatever training the human military had provided. He looked completely calm. "Begin," I commanded, and activated the arena's combat protocols. The crowd erupted in anticipation as the gladiator entry gates opened and 40 of the galaxy's most dangerous predators entered the arena. They moved with coordinated precision, spreading out to create multiple attack vectors while maintaining tactical formations that spoke of extensive military experience. Jake Thompson stood in the center of the arena, completely motionless, as he was surrounded by creatures specifically evolved and trained to kill efficiently. The Threxian war chief raised his plasma cannon and fired first. What happened next redefined my understanding of what was possible in combat. Jake moved. Not quickly, not with superhuman speed, but with a fluidity and precision that suggested every motion had been calculated in advance. The plasma blast that should have vaporized him passed through empty air as Jake somehow positioned himself exactly where the shot was not. Before the war chief could fire again, Jake was moving toward the nearest group of gladiators, 3 Vorthan battle maidens who had arranged themselves in a defensive triangle with overlapping fields of fire. The first battle maiden activated her energy sword and struck with lethal precision. Jake caught the blade with his bare hand. The energy weapon, designed to cut through battle armor, sparked against Jake's palm and went dark. He looked at the battle maiden with those unsettling blue eyes and smiled. "Nice sword," he said, conversationally, then crushed the weapon's power cell with his fingers. The battle maiden stared at him in shock before reaching for her backup weapon. Jake moved faster than my eyes could track, his hands striking her throat with surgical precision. She collapsed instantly, unconscious but alive. The second battle maiden fired her energy rifle at point-blank range. The blast struck Jake's center mass and should have killed him instantly. Instead, he absorbed the energy somehow, his body glowing briefly with stored power before he redirected it back at the shooter. The redirected energy struck the battle maiden's armor with enough force to send her flying across the arena. She hit the wall with a sound like thunder and did not get up. The third battle maiden activated her personal teleportation device, appearing behind Jake with her weapon already firing. Jake spun around and caught the energy beam in his hand, somehow compressing the deadly energy into a small sphere of contained plasma. "Interesting technology," he said calmly, then threw the energy sphere at a group of approaching Krellian berserkers. The explosion eliminated 3 of them instantly. The crowd had gone silent. This was not gladiatorial combat as they understood it. This was something that transcended their experience entirely. "Impossible," Captain Vex whispered. "Energy absorption and redirection requires technology we do not possess." "He is not using technology," Dr. Crix reported through the communication system. "The bio readings indicate that his enhanced physiology is somehow converting incoming energy into usable power. He is literally feeding on the attacks directed at him." Jake Thompson had just demonstrated that human military enhancement included the ability to turn enemy weapons into personal power sources. The remaining gladiators regrouped and began coordinated assault patterns. The Krellian berserkers charged from multiple directions while the Threxian war chiefs provided covering fire with their heavy weapons. Vorthan assassins used stealth technology to approach from unexpected angles. Jake stood in the center of their coordinated attack and laughed. It was not a sound of amusement. It was the laugh of a predator that had just realized its prey was more dangerous than anticipated. "Finally," he said, loud enough for his voice to carry throughout the arena, "a real fight." What followed was not combat. It was a demonstration in applied physics, tactical supremacy, and the kind of enhanced combat capabilities that redefined what was possible for biological entities. Jake moved through the attacking gladiators like liquid death. Every motion was economical, precise, and devastatingly effective. When the Krellian berserkers tried to overwhelm him with brute force, he used their own momentum against them, redirecting their attacks into each other. When the Threxian war chiefs attempted long-range bombardment, he somehow deflected their plasma blasts back at them with lethal accuracy. The Vorthan assassins lasted approximately 15 seconds. Their stealth technology was useless against someone whose enhanced senses could track movement through heat signatures, air displacement, and electromagnetic fields. Jake eliminated them one by one, moving with such speed and precision that they appeared to simply fall unconscious as he passed by. "He is not killing them," I observed with growing amazement. "He is systematically disabling each opponent without inflicting fatal damage." "Confirmed," Dr. Crix reported. "Medical scans show unconsciousness, temporary paralysis, and minor injuries, but no life-threatening trauma. He is deliberately using non-lethal force." The crowd was completely silent now, watching something that defied every expectation they had brought to the arena. This was not entertainment. This was education. 20 minutes after the match began, 37 gladiators lay unconscious around the arena floor. 3 remained standing. The most experienced and dangerous warriors in our facility. The Krellian Berserker Prime, a creature that had survived over 200 arena matches. The Threxian War Chief Alpha, a strategic genius with decades of military experience. The Vorthan Battle Maiden Supreme, an assassin whose kill count included entire enemy units. These 3 had survived by working together, using coordinated tactics, and superior positioning to avoid Jake's systematic elimination of their companions. Jake Thompson looked at them with obvious respect. "You 3 are good," he said. "Professional quality. I am impressed." "Human," the Berserker Prime growled. "You fight with honor. We have learned much from observing your techniques." "Thank you," Jake replied politely. "You have also demonstrated excellent tactical adaptability. Your species should be proud." "Are you ready to surrender?" asked the War Chief Alpha, his weapon trained on Jake's position. Jake smiled that terrifying smile. "I was about to ask you the same question." "We are 3, you are 1, the Battle Maiden Supreme pointed out. "The odds are against you." "Are they?" Jake asked. "Let me show you something." What happened next taught me why humans were classified as Category X. Jake Thompson activated some kind of emergency combat protocol that his bio readings had been building toward throughout the entire match. Every enhanced system in his body synchronized into what I can only describe as a state of perfect lethality. He moved. Not quickly. Not with superhuman speed. He simply moved from one position to another, and in the space between those positions, reality seemed to reorganize itself around his will. The Berserker Prime struck with claws that could rend battle armor. Jake was not there when the claws arrived, but he was there when the Berserker's balance shifted, applying exactly the right amount of force to send 3 meters of muscle and bone tumbling across the arena floor. The War Chief Alpha fired his plasma cannon with perfect targeting accuracy. The shot struck empty air as Jake somehow positioned himself in the weapon's blind spot while simultaneously disabling its power coupling with a touch that looked almost gentle. The Battle Maiden Supreme activated every stealth and speed enhancement at her disposal, moving faster than most species could perceive. Jake tracked her perfectly, countering every attack with minimal effort while systematically disabling her equipment piece by piece. Within 30 seconds, all 3 of the arena's most dangerous gladiators were unconscious on the arena floor. Jake Thompson stood alone in the center of the arena, surrounded by 40 defeated opponents, completely unharmed and barely breathing hard. The silence was absolute. "Ladies and gentlemen," the arena announcer's voice finally echoed through the facility, though he sounded like he was struggling to believe what he had witnessed. "Your winner, the human." The crowd erupted in stunned applause. They had come expecting entertainment and had witnessed something that transcended their understanding of combat entirely. Jake walked to the center of the arena and looked up at my control booth. Even from that distance, I could see those unsettling blue eyes clearly. "Arena Master," his voice carried clearly through the arena's communication system, "I believe we had an agreement." Before I could respond, alarms began sounding throughout the facility. "Arena Master," Thylax announced with obvious panic, "we are detecting multiple unidentified vessels approaching the facility. They are not responding to communication requests and are moving in military formation." I checked my chronometer. 2 hours and 31 minutes had passed since Jake Thompson's demonstration began. His people had arrived exactly on schedule. "How many vessels?" I asked, though my voice sounded strange to my own auditory organs. 12, Thilex replied. "Small, fast-moving craft with advanced stealth capabilities. They appeared on our sensors without warning." 12 ships for one person?" Captain Bex asked. Jake Thompson's voice echoed through the arena from below. "Arena Master, I should probably mention that those are not ships. What are they?" I called down to him. Jake's smile was visible even from the control booth. "Those are my teammates." The implications of that statement crashed over me like a colliding asteroid. 12 individual humans, each presumably possessing capabilities similar to what we had just witnessed in the arena. "Arena Master," Thilex reported with increasing alarm. "The unidentified craft are requesting permission to dock. The transmission is unusual." "Define unusual." "They are using our personal communication codes, and they appear to know your name." Jake Thompson had somehow provided his unit with complete intelligence about our facility, including classified access codes and personnel information, while fighting 40 gladiators in single combat. "Patch me through to their communication frequency," I commanded. The arena's main speakers activated, and a voice that sounded remarkably similar to Jake's echoed through the facility. "Grand Coliseum Control, this is Colonial Marine Strike Team 7 requesting permission to dock for personnel retrieval. We are here to collect our missing team member." "This is Arena Master Vorthak," I replied. "Your team member is unharmed." "Confirmed. We have been monitoring his biosignatures throughout his stay at your facility. We are aware of his arena performance." Very impressive, by the way. They had been monitoring Jake's condition remotely. Through whatever enhancements he possessed, his people had been able to track his location, physical status, and activities in real time. "What are your intentions?" I asked. "Simple retrieval, Arena Master. We collect Jake, compensate you for any inconvenience, and depart peacefully." "Compensate us?" Jake's voice carried up from the arena floor. "Arena Master, Colonial Marines always pay their debts. How much would you estimate tonight's entertainment was worth?" I looked around at 127,000 spectators, who had just witnessed the most extraordinary gladiatorial match in Galactic history. The betting revenues alone would fund facility operations for the next decade. The entertainment value was significant, I admitted. "Strike Team 7 to Grand Coliseum Control." The communication frequency activated again. "We are prepared to offer compensation equivalent to 1 million galactic credits for any inconvenience our team member may have caused." 1 million credits, more than the annual profit of most gladiatorial operations. "That is acceptable," I managed to say. "Excellent. Requesting permission to dock at your main facility port. We will complete the transaction and retrieval within 1 hour." As I authorized the docking procedures, I found myself staring down at Jake Thompson, who was now helping the unconscious gladiators regain consciousness with what appeared to be medical supplies from his personal equipment. "Jake Thompson," I called down to him, "was any of this real?" He looked up at me with those blue eyes that had seen things I could not imagine. "What do you mean, Arena Master? The capture, the slavery, the gladiatorial combat, was any of it genuine, or was this entire scenario planned from the beginning?" Jake's smile became something that carried implications I was only beginning to understand. "Arena Master," he said quietly, "Colonial Marines are trained to operate in hostile territory with minimal equipment and support. Sometimes the best way to gather intelligence about a facility is to be purchased by that facility." The truth crashed over me like a plasma storm. Jake Thompson had not been captured by slave traders. He had allowed himself to be captured as part of an intelligence-gathering operation. "You wanted to be brought here," I said. "We wanted to understand how gladiatorial operations functioned," Jake confirmed. "Your facility was identified as a representative example of galactic entertainment industry practices. And your conclusion?" Jake looked around at the 40 gladiators who were now conscious and gathering around him with obvious respect and admiration. "Our conclusion," he said, "is that gladiatorial slavery represents a significant violation of colonial marine ethical standards, and that something should be done about it." Before I could ask what that meant, My communication officer announced that the human vessels had completed docking procedures. Arena Master, Felix reported. 12 individuals in advanced combat armor are requesting access to the main arena area. Through the arena's security monitors, I watched as 12 figures in sophisticated military equipment entered the facility. They moved with the same fluid precision I had observed in Jake Thompson, and their bio readings showed similar enhancement levels. 12 enhanced human soldiers, each one potentially capable of what I had just witnessed in the arena. They arranged themselves in a formal military formation around Jake Thompson, who saluted them with obvious respect. "Strike Team 7, he announced. "Mission accomplished. Intelligence gathering is complete." "Understood," replied their apparent leader. "Were there any complications?" Jake looked up at my control booth with those unsettling blue eyes. "A few minor educational opportunities. Nothing we could not handle." The leader of the human strike team activated the arena's communication system. "Arena Master Vorthak, this is Lieutenant Commander Sarah Chen, Colonial Marine Corps. We are here to retrieve our team member and complete our business with your facility." "What kind of business?" I asked, though every instinct I possessed was screaming warnings. "Compensation for services rendered as promised," Commander Chen replied. "And a proposal for ongoing cooperation." "What kind of cooperation?" Jake Thompson's voice carried up from the arena floor. "Arena Master, how would you like to convert your facility from slave-based gladiatorial combat to voluntary professional competition?" The arena fell silent except for the humming of life support systems and the sound of my own increasingly irregular heartbeat. "Voluntary professional competition?" I repeated. "Combat sports," Commander Chen explained. "Athletes who choose to compete, with proper safety protocols, fair compensation, and respect for participant rights. Human space has several highly successful leagues that generate significant entertainment revenue without requiring slavery. And if we refuse?" The silence that followed lasted several seconds before Commander Chen responded. "Arena Master, the Colonial Marine Corps takes a very dim view of slavery operations. However, we also recognize that cultural change takes time and education. We are prepared to offer technical assistance, financial support, and operational guidance to help facilities like yours transition to ethical entertainment models. And if we still refuse?" Commander Chen's voice carried implications that made my survival instincts scream warnings I could no longer ignore. "Then we will return this facility to the gladiators who built it with their blood and sacrifice, and we will ensure that anyone who profited from slavery understands why humans consider that to be a capital offense." I looked down at Jake Thompson and his 11 teammates, standing in formation among 40 gladiators who were watching this conversation with obvious interest. These were beings who had just witnessed human combat capabilities firsthand, and they were clearly reconsidering their opinions about their current situation. "How long do we have to decide?" I asked. "Take all the time you need," Commander Chen replied. "But Jake will be staying here as our liaison until you reach a decision." "Staying here?" Jake Thompson's smile returned, and this time it was accompanied by something that made me understand why capturing humans was the worst mistake anyone in the galaxy could make. "I have grown quite fond of this facility," he said cheerfully, "and I think your gladiators have more to learn about voluntary combat techniques." The gladiators' collective response was immediate and enthusiastic. They wanted Jake to stay. They wanted to learn from him. They wanted to understand what combat could be like when participants actually chose to fight. "Arena Master," the Krellian Berserker Prime called up to my control booth. "We request permission to train with the human." "As do we," added the Threxian War Chief Alpha. "And we," said the Vorthan Battle Maiden Supreme. Within minutes, every gladiator in the facility was requesting training with Jake Thompson. These were beings who had been forced to fight for the entertainment of others, and they were enthusiastically embracing the opportunity to learn from someone who fought by choice. "Very well," I heard myself saying, though I was not sure when I had made that decision. "Colonial Marine Thompson, you are welcome to remain at our facility as a consultant." "Excellent," Jake replied. "I look forward to working with your gladiators on developing their voluntary combat skills." As the human strike team prepared to depart, leaving Jake Thompson behind as their representative, I found myself staring at the fundamental transformation of everything I thought I understood about gladiatorial entertainment. Within 24 hours we had gone from purchasing a human slave to employing a human consultant. Within 1 week, voluntary combat training had replaced forced gladiatorial matches. Within 1 month, the Grand Coliseum had become the most successful professional combat sports facility in the sector. And within 1 year, slavery-based gladiatorial combat had been eliminated from 17 different star systems, as word of our success spread throughout the galaxy. The gladiators who had once been property became athletes, competitors, and teachers. They earned respect, compensation, and the right to choose their own destinies. And at the center of it all was Jake Thompson, the human who had taught us that true strength came not from forcing others to fight, but from choosing to fight for principles that mattered. The lesson was complete, but the education continued every day, because now we understood why humans were classified as Category X. They were not just dangerous because of their enhanced capabilities or their advanced technology. They were dangerous because they refused to accept injustice, even when that injustice was legally sanctioned and culturally accepted. And that, more than any weapon or enhancement, made them the most formidable force in the galaxy. The apex predators of a death world had taught us something far more valuable than combat techniques. They had taught us what it meant to choose freedom over slavery, dignity over entertainment, and justice over profit. And the galaxy would never be the same.